if we're going somewhere we know, like we've been visiting with you guys before, so we stayed in downtown, literally next door to the YMCA.
Excellent.
So we just walked there this morning and then go and haggle with the guy for 15 minutes to let us get in the pool.
Did you really?
He didn't like our UK IDs and things like that. But no, he's friendly enough in the end. But yeah, you
guys do look like suspicious characters. I mean, I wouldn't have been letting you in either.
What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Being slouches with a couple of non-slouches.
Less slouches. This will be our first people on the couch with accents.
Mm-hmm. Which adds credibility.
Yeah.
Automatic credibility added.
Street cred.
We're not from Australia.
Yeah.
We've got Andy Blow and Jonny Tye on the couch today from Precision Hydration, but guess what we're not talking about today? Hydration.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you the real quick rundown. Everybody sweats differently. You need to get your sweat tested. Sweat rate, sweat sodium concentration. We'll figure it all out. Spiel. Bam.
And it'll be a life-changing decision for you to get that done.
Game changer. But first, shout-outs. My shout-out today, clearly, Movember. Happy Movember, everyone.
That little caterpillar on his face over there.
I hope everybody makes the wise decision to grow a stash this Movember.
You started early, though. I thought you had to start on the first.
No.
Cheating.
You just have to sport a stash. You can grow it. If you want to do the no-shave November thing, you can do that. But generally, well, let's be honest. I have to get a head start.
Yeah.
So
Andy started for next year.
Andy and I think, are in the same boat over here.
Yeah. Bryant once had a really good Fu Manchu. Actually, he had a Fu Manchu at my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fun fact, it's red.
It's red, yeah.
So
I keep asking him to bring it back, but his wife...
Yeah, I was going to say, if Molly Sanford, if you're online, weigh in on how you're liking Movember so far.
I got a head start. All right.
I got one. Hart Robinson. We've talked about him before in shout-outs. He won the single speed and the Cat 1 cyclocross race over in Nashville area last weekend. So good job,
Harpeth.
Hart.
Was it Harpeth?
Yep. Across the Harpeth.
Yep.
Nice job there, buddy.
You guys got any shout-outs?
We just want to thank Gus's Fried Chicken,
Absolutely,
famous Memphis Fried Chicken, for feeding us last night,
and Miller Lite for supplying the drinks.
If you've never gone to Gus's, you got to experience it at least once.
We were disappointed though. There was last time we went there was a guy sat outside with a gun in his lap, but he wasn't there.
He wasn't there this time?
He was just...
It was raining though.
That could be it. That was raining last time or last night? Last night it was...
Last night
it was raining. Drove him off.
Yeah, UK spec weather.
They don't make chicken like that in the UK though.
No,
not a chance.
No,
not a chance.
So Gus's opportunity over in the UK.
Yeah.
I feel some expansion coming on. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to go about training for endurance events on what we would consider super low volume, roughly in the 5 to 6 hour a week range. So first off, like what is low volume? Kind of just hinted on that. 5 to 6 hours a week is pretty low. Brian, what's the, like an average for your like time crunch folks?
I mean, if someone's getting 7, they're doing a pretty dang good job. Like they're having to kind of move things around to get 7 hours on the super time crunch folks. But typically, I mean, that person that'd be like a peak week. So, they're in that 5 hour range. If they can work in 40-minute workouts, that's what we're trying to kind of plan around. And if they can do something long on the weekend, that's sort of the anomaly sometimes for those folks. But if they can get the longer training in, then that can bump their week volume up. But we usually don't plan around that, on them being able to get that. That's like a bonus rather than a standard thing that we'd put in.
Yeah. So what, like, Andy, what do you consider, like, what's realistic to train, like, duration event to train for on, that 5 to 6 hour a week?
I think One thing that's important is how you define the hours in the week, because I did an experiment this year where I was logging all of my training with my Garmin and downloading it all, and what I would have put in my old training diaries as an hour's training, when you actually take to moving time, say off a watch, especially for things like swimming where you do a lot of stop-start, I would have written down an hour's swim session in the past, but it's actually 40 minutes of swimming. So I think when we talk about limited hours, I'm definitely talking about actual training time. Not like, I went to the gym for an hour. Right. It's like, how long were you active for? So based on that, from what I learned this year, I trained for a 9-hour event, which was a swim run event, and I averaged 5 hours a week through the bulk of my training period for that, which was about 3 months. 3 months in the build-up, and that was coming into it with some fitness. I was, and when I looked at that data, I was pretty shocked. If you'd have asked me, I would have said I was doing like 8 or 9 hours a week. But I got
actual quality when you're doing the work was more like 5 hours.
Doing the work 5 hours a week.
Well, that's one of the things, like, we're having an indoor trainer, or a treadmill. People tend to hate doing that because it's not nearly as fun. But if you are a time crunch person, the quality that you can get on that versus like if we left for a ride from this house, we'd go through lights. Until we actually got to a spot where we're getting quality work in, would be 15, 20
training
minutes.
Admin. Reducing the admin around each session, keeping it efficient and slick.
30 minutes on the trainer is 30 minutes. It can be 30 minutes of hard riding, but and not having to roll out, not having to get loads of gear on. Oh yeah, that's another huge factor. Especially in the wintertime. We're transitioning towards winter right now. It takes 20 minutes to get all your gear on if it's a cold, drizzly day. And by that time, a lot of times in the wintertime, I'm like, I'm just going to jump on the trainer, because what's going to be an hour and a half of getting ready and getting out there, I may get less than an hour ride, really. Whereas if I hop on the trainer right now and do an hour and a half, I mean, that's going to be a lot better workload. Oftentimes, if you're training indoors, if it's treadmill, if it's pool-based swimming, or if you're on a bike trainer or whatever, you can do a far more structured session as well, because you've not got the vagaries of whatever's going on with the weather and that sort of thing. So I think switching some of your training to that controlled environment's good.
Definitely.
I think of all the people that I coach, including myself, who are time crunched and are in that like under 8 hour a week average, they do a ton of indoor training. It's just so much more efficient for your time. There's no travel back and forth. There's no that lost time getting out of town to where you can actually do any type of quality or structure. You can just get on and go. So I would say I'm the king of the 30-minute treadmill run. Just get on there and knock it out. Doesn't matter.
Self-appointed king.
Anytime. Bring it on. What you got?
So what kind of volume were you putting out for your 50K you ran recently?
When I did the 50K, the majority of the volume was like Saturday, Sunday. So I'd run long, like I think the longest run I did was 3 hours on Saturday, and then I might do another hour. I think one weekend I did 3 and then 2, and that was the biggest weekend I did. And then during the week, it was no more than an hour, and I only got an hour if I ran on the treadmill, because it was just the only way I could work it into the day with the family and kids and work and everything. So there were a lot of times where I was jumping on the treadmill at like 7:30 at night to knock out an hour.
Getting it done.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah.
So you did some longer stuff at the weekends, but generally the sessions you did building up to Otillo, what were there?
Most of the time I was doing similar. I don't have access to a treadmill close by, so I just go out and run, and I would run 40 minutes and keep it pretty high intensity for that, and just try and. I think one of the big things is the mindset of going, well, if I can get 40 minutes in, I can get it in and get it done, and it's worth doing. I might want to do 90 minutes or 2 hours or whatever, and that might be actually, if you looked at an idealistic point of view, that might be what would be best to prepare for the event. But 40 minutes, way better than not doing anything at all.
Oh, exactly.
And in fact, that goes all the way down. We spend a lot of time on the road with work, and sometimes you've got 15 or 20 minutes to fit in a workout in a day, and it's very easy to just not do those.
So kind of dive into that a little bit more. So you guys have been in the U.S. all week visiting different stuff with the whole precision hydration, the growth, the expansion. So you've been bouncing around. You're here till tomorrow. Tomorrow you're going Milwaukee.
Yep.
We were talking earlier about how you guys were sneaking workouts in along the way. So talk like folks that are traveling, and a lot of people that are time crunched are either business people that end up traveling a lot. A lot of the people we coach are like that. So what are some of the ways you guys have snuck in workouts?
Yeah, I think pre-planning is a big thing. So we'll always look, if we're traveling in the UK, we go and stay near places where there are gyms we're members of, so we can go and swim.
Yep,
we know
perfect.
the pool's always good. We know there's good Wi-Fi, so you can get straight out, straight back into the inbox if you need to.
Yep.
When we come out here, YMCA pools are really consistently good, and we jumped in for a swim this morning. We're always up at the crack of dawn. We were up at 4 o'clock this morning, so we're in the pool for 5, and you're getting it done.
So we if we go in somewhere we know, like we've been visiting with you guys before, so we stayed in downtown, literally next door to the YMCA.
Excellent.
So we just walked there this morning and then go and haggle with the guy for 15 minutes to let us get in the pool.
Did you really?
Yeah, he didn't like our UK IDs and things like that. No. But no, he was friendly enough in the end. But yeah,
you guys do look like suspicious characters. I wouldn't have been letting you in either.
But the great thing was then you get an hour in the pool, and I think it was like $10, which is very reasonable to have we had a whole pool to ourselves basically. So we always try and sort of know where we're going, and if not, things like I've used Strava lots for this. If you're looking for a hotel, I'll pull up Google Maps, then pull up Strava segments and go right. If there's a ton of segments, I'll go right. I'll get a hotel there. We were just in Colorado.
Horrible endurance area. Actually, Colorado struggles with the endurance scene.
It was struggling in the snow.
There was a lot of snow going down.
But we found a little place. We were recommended it by Josh from Orange Mud, who does hydration packs. Good.
Shout out Orange Mud.
Yeah.
I actually used their double barrel vest pack for the 50K.
Oh yeah, and great kit and great dude. Josh obviously knows the area like the back of his hand. We said we want to do a short workout. He sent us this place, the Philip Miller Memorial Park. And there was basically, he said there's a set of steps. It's like about 100 steps up to the top of a peak, and then a little track that comes down. And I think it's like 2/3 of a mile to do a loop, and you just go up and do some loops. And
a lot of elevation gain and.
We ran up the set of steps the first time, then we both nearly fainted and vomited at the top, and then what kind of did it.
Which kind of, obviously that was more elevation, altitude induced, but from an intensity standpoint, if you don't have as much time ramping that intensity, it's about training stress. So stressing your body, you can do a hard 20 minutes. And it will feel a lot worse than you do going and doing an easy, 1 hour.
I think you do have to be extremely honest about what you're trying to accomplish. And all of the training, the race I trained for this year, which is it's called Otillo, which is a swim run. It's a big European thing, which is starting to infiltrate the US. Yeah. So you swim and run alternately between islands or across an organic bit of terrain in pairs. The World Championships event in Sweden is 65 kilometres, so about 40 odd miles of running, and about 10 k's or 6 miles of swimming, all spread out. So it's a long day. It's like a kind of Ironman-esque endurance challenge. And I knew that we'd be trying to swim at like 1 minute 20 per 100 metre pace in the water, and the running there is slow because it's trails and stuff, but I figured that, effort wise, it would probably be like 7-minute miling. That sort of thing. So I made sure that.
So perceived effort wise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I made
where would that rank? Like a threshold hard hour thing for you? What would that?
For an hour. So I reckon I could, at the moment, or when I was building up to that, I would have probably run. For an hour, I probably would have run just under 6 minutes a mile if I was going flat out.
Yeah.
So it was, I did most of my training because I couldn't get the volume. I made sure that was a kind of benchmark intensity, and I was rarely below that.
Yep.
Everything was like that or above, because then you at least get some additional adaptation. I think what was interesting was you actually then can go a long way on a small amount of training, but what you can't develop quite as well. So from a sort of cardiovascular standpoint, you can be in great shape. But for me, where the race was tough was from a mechanical point of view. Mechanical stress and muscular endurance. My legs were falling apart because if the longest training run I did was 20 miles, and you're going to run 45.
Doubling that, and not including the swimming that's going on as well.
You can't hide from that.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
That is that's probably the best point to put into the conversation into low volume training is you can get cardiovascularly as fit as you need to be on high intensity, low volume stuff, but as far as the muscular endurance and just mechanical breakdown,
fatigue resistance,
it's really hard to simulate if you're not doing some of those longer days. I think I even did, I with the weather and stuff, when I was training for the 50K, couldn't get out on the trails as much as I wanted to, and it bit me on, I was totally ready as far as fitness goes, but my legs were not prepared to go 4,000 feet downhill. That was the hardest part.
Which is one of the other things we were wanting to touch on during this conversation was that idea of specificity. And Jonny, Jonny jumped right into that. So go ahead and talk some about that, Jonny.
I think just before we do so, the other thing that we did, we trained for the Devizes to Westminster canoe race at Easter this year, which is...
By the way, Johnny's a professional, professional canoeist. So he's got some background and knows what he's talking about.
You probably wouldn't guess based on his upper body. We were saying we were going to have a competition, Dale versus Jonny in a arm wrestling competition, and then Andy versus me.
I would like to.
But we were training for the Devizes to Westminster canoe race, which is 125 miles in the UK. You race from Devizes in Wiltshire all the way down the canal, and jump on the Thames, and all the way down the Thames, and you finish under Westminster Bridge. So it's usually one in about 16 hours, something like that, each year. And we were shooting to be around 18, 19 hours, something like that. And we were pretty stretched for time. One of the things we did to maximise the shorter sessions was if we could catch 45 minutes or an hour one evening and then back it up the next morning very early in the session, you can get
stacking those
short sessions to maybe eke a little bit more adaptation out of them. And the specificity thing, we'd go out in all the same kit, we were paddling in the same boat. The pacing was, we were always looking at the pace we're going to be shooting for the race. Like Andy says, we're shooting to be around that pace, and spending our time in the boat on the water together was more important than spending time for me in the gym doing other things that we needed to gel, and that's a big part of that. So doing exactly what you're going to do for the race is important.
Well, I guess another thing kind of jump on top of that is you guys molding together an event that requires you two to be in sync during that. So that kind of relates to technique and efficiency, other stuff that you can be doing to improve your performance if you're paying attention to it. It doesn't take extra time to put emphasis on your technique, your efficiency, your fueling, the other aspects that are going to lead into...
We also, because we were only going out for an hour, there's no real need to fuel significantly for that length of time at all. We were going to be racing for 19 hours. So practicing that nutrition and hydration strategy over the shorter distances, even though you're not going to require that in those sessions, is very, very important.
We learned some things about where to put the bottles on our and also what kind of foods we could tolerate and things. So although it wasn't like Jonny said, it wasn't necessarily the specific nature of the race. So when you're going out, if you were doing it, you're going out on a bike ride, you might not need lots of additional energy, but you might want to try some of your nutrition.
Oh, exactly.
You've got to test it out. You don't want to be.
Well, and your heart rate's going to be higher during those short and more intense sessions, which is pretty similar when you start looking at cardiac drift that happens with folks later in a long event. When fatigue builds and that heart and cardiovascular system starting to have to work harder, we see that heart rate climb, which is a good when your heart rate's high. Your stomach may not like the same stuff that it likes when you're cruising at say 130 beats per minute.
Well, it was all uncharted territory for me from an endurance standpoint. 9 hours is the longest I've ever been, let alone doing a full.
This is like double.
18, So
you guys had great conditions that day, though, right?
Unfortunately, they cut the race short. So I can't remember what I was going to say now. You cut me off. It's gone.
I messed you up. I messed you up.
It was probably really important, but
so Andy, when you did Otillo,
it was the time.
You did it with Paul Newsom from Swim Smooth.
Yeah, that could be another good shout.
Who's also shout out Paul. Who's he's a busy guy too.
Yeah.
And so did he have a similar kind of low volume
Yeah, yes, Paul did.
Very experienced open water swimmer.
Yeah, and actually, a lot of people don't necessarily, because Paul's, a lot of people know him for his swimming, because he's won the round Manhattan Island swim, he's swum the English Channel, but prior to all that, he was a very good triathlete as well. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure he's run, close to 15 minutes for 5K way back when, and he was a very solid bike rider as well. Yeah. So he had to, but that was years ago. He had a lot of running injuries, and one of the things we did was, we didn't even make a big point of this, but it just kind of happened. When we were going through the training, he lives in Perth in Australia, so we didn't see each other hardly at all. We were pinging each other on WhatsApp and on Messenger and just saying what kind of sessions we were doing and making sure that we were aligned with the pace. He was having to do a little bit more running to try and get his running up to my running speed. I was having to do a hell of a lot more swimming to get my swimming up to his swimming speed. And so we were using that, and that was fantastic because there was a camaraderie element. It was pushing us. He gave us these fantastic swim sessions, which were called Red Mist sessions, he calls them. It's basically 4,000 meters of effort. We did them once a week. He would do them. Jonny was jumping in as well and doing them, and we had this thing where it was super efficient, and we would basically strip out anything extraneous from the session. Tiny little warm up or warm up in the first. If it was the classic Red Mist is 10 times 400 meters. First 400 you build into it, and then you're at full pace basically throughout. And then even the cool down, you might do 50 meters on the end. And I think that's always an interesting one, because if you were teaching people the best way to construct a session and do things optimally, it's like really good long building warm up, nice long cool down to de-stress afterwards. But if you're time crunched, you kind of have to make some compromises. And for me, that's where I always still, especially if it's cold, you still have to warm up a bit. You have to know your body, and you have to know when it's good to go, and you haven't got time to faff around. So cool downs,
And the higher the impact, the sport you're doing, the more you want to pay attention to that warm up. Something like cycling, you can get away with, 5 minutes in having your first hard effort and body being okay from a, hedging against injury style standpoint there.
And injuries is a really important one, because that was another thing Paul and I talked about endlessly. It was like, how consistent can you be without getting ill and injured is another critical thing. So doing everything you could to mitigate injury issues.
Yeah, I think consistency, it doesn't matter if you're training on super high volume. Consistency is the number one. We've probably said that in every episode so far, is the word consistency. And especially if you're doing low volume, like you said, it's easy you said it earlier, it's easy to think, well, I've only got 20 minutes. That is barely worth my time to put my shoes on. But it really is. 20 minutes hard, it makes a huge difference. And if you go real hard, that's exponential load. Intensity increases workload so much. If you go out and you throw down, go blocks for 20 minutes, you'll feel it. You're going to feel it, and you're going to gain a lot from it.
Yeah.
Consistency.
And that helps it continue to be a part of your routine.
Yeah.
If you go 4 days of skipping what was planned, so one of the issues we have is if we plan an hour workout and the person's only able to get 30 of that, it's really easy for them to just blow it off. Yeah. So we have a lot of conversations with folks I want you to tell me what is actually realistic. If it's 30 minutes, tell me it's 30 minutes. Don't tell me it's an hour, because you hope to get an hour. And we can maximize what is best for you to do during that time. But it's easy for you to blow it off when you aren't going to hit the workout that's planned. And then you get out of that routine. And once you get out of the routine, it's so much more difficult to get into a routine.
Yeah, because consistency just falls off. And I definitely took a view that I just had to be realistic for probably one of the real first times in my life. Always in the past, I reckon I've trained for a lot of events in the last few years when I haven't really had the time to do it, and I've set myself targets which have almost always been unattainable. My wife just laughs at me every time, because I'll say about a week before the end, I really haven't done enough training for this. And she's like, yep, like every other event in the last 10 years, because, with kids and the business and that sort of thing, that's just the reality. Yeah. So I tried to take a view this time around that, look, this is what I can do.
Yep.
And the biggest thing I can do to maximize it is to do it totally consistency, like clockwork. And I think I look back, and out of the main 12-week block, there was not a single week when I didn't run at least once. I ran, and most of the time it was 3 runs or 4 runs a week. There was definitely not a single week I didn't swim, because I was paranoid about being dumped off my phone. So I was like keeping that up. And actually, there's something that's kind of gained in terms of like deeper fitness from just that week in, week out churning. And so what I'd say to people definitely is don't be put off if you haven't got a lot of time, because if you trade that high volume for consistency over weeks, and I did it for a 12-week block, well, imagine what you could do if you get a 16, 20, 24 week block in, all at low volume, but you just manage don't get ill, don't get injured, keep rolling. You can really surprise yourself, I think. And I think you can do a lot more than would have you believe, because we hear these stories about what pro athletes are doing. We spoke to a pro athlete for our newsletter recently, a girl called Sarah Lewis, who just got a silver medal at the European Championships in Ibiza for middle distance triathlon. She's real top athlete, trained by Brett Sutton, the Aussie guy who's famous for high volume. And one of her comments is, I don't do high volume, I do about 25 hours a week, And you're like, you hear that kind of thing, and you hear these numbers.
That's a month and a half.
You hear these numbers thrown around. And and she is a full-time pro athlete. Exactly. I have no doubt she is doing 25 hours a week, but it's the kind of, for her, that, because she's comparing herself with all these 35, 40, isn't it?
Exactly.
And that, for me, you hear all those stories, and then it's very easy to think, well, I can't even do half that. But
it's easy to talk yourself out of trying to do something longer, endurance based, if you are time crunched. But if you take into consideration a lot of the points that we made today, it's not that difficult. I mean, especially if you like both of you guys have been in your respective sports, have been training for years. You've chronologically years and years of backed up training where you were training high volume, and very specific. And that goes a long way. So, I know Bryant and I are both, we've been training in our respective sports for over 10 years. And, once you get that far into it, you can do a little bit less and still have pretty dang good fitness. I'll ask one other thing that get your opinion on, Andy, is when you're training such low volume, we always talk about making sure that you've got planned recovery weeks, and dialing it back, letting the adaptation happen. How do you structure recovery into the training?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I actually, in that 12-week block, didn't take a deliberate down week at all, because I felt like I was, even if if you trained exceptionally hard, you could obviously wear yourself out in 5 hours a week. But in reality, I was still within, most of the training was still largely aerobic. So I felt that I didn't need any structured recovery. What I did was, when I did my bigger weekends of training, I definitely had light days following up from that. So if I did I did a couple of 20-mile runs, and then I would just do either a day off or a very light swim the day after, and a very easy jog or swim the following day, and kind of had these little micro recoveries just to make sure. And that was more about not getting ill and injured than it was about anything else.
So it's just more, and that's what we do a lot with our time crunch folks, is it's a lot more built-in recovery between the session. Like the micro, if you look at the micro level, like week and day session, it's a lot more built into there than it is actually built into like the whole month.
A month,
for sure. Whereas when I was doing high volume training, like 20 hours a week plus, I would definitely have down weeks.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing on that to get recovery, I think, is I'm a big fan of every now and then breaking it up and doing a very specific week on, if you're a triathlete, doing a specific week where one sport is dominant for a change. So you might have a run week, one in every 8 or 9 weeks, and you might have a bike week where you basically do 1 or 2 sessions in the other sports, but every other session is in that. And that, whilst that doesn't give you a complete break, if you're carrying a running niggle and you just swim for a whole week and cycle, then that's actually a really good thing. And it's a sort of recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've done that a lot of times with people, especially in the off season, where if one of the 3 sports is their limiter, we'll cut the other 2 back to 1 to 2 sessions, and then just hammer the one, over the time where it doesn't matter anymore. We're not training for a specific thing. We're just trying to improve on limiters at that point.
I learned that from an old running coach of mine who I'd sort of set up with to improve my running as a triathlete, and he ended up looking over my whole program a lot of the time, and he said to me, like, I'm struggling to see how you're going to really improve your running training in this way, because he said, you want to improve your running, you're going to need to run a lot more. And
so what were you doing at the time?
I was doing Ironman at the time, and I was trying to drop my run time, and basically he had me running 100 miles in a week every certain amount of weeks, which inevitably meant you run 100 miles in a week, you have to cut back on
for sure,
but then
not to low volume.
If I ran 100 miles in a week, that would be like a 48-hour week, I think, based on my speed.
But still a 6-hour week for Andy.
That little bit of extra stimulus though, every once in a while, it brought I felt like I moved my running up one whole notch, and then it doesn't really, it takes a lot for it to drop back. You can maintain that new level off a far lower volume. It's not like you've got to commit to doing 100-mile weeks once a month for the rest of your year. It's going to the next level. Exactly the same thing happened with my swimming. I showed up at university many years ago, not quite good enough to make the teams with triathlon because my swimming wasn't there. So I jumped in and did like 30k of swimming a week for several weeks.
Really focused on your limiter.
Drop the times, and then of course you have to at some point dial it back. So I think you can go all in like that for short periods, and it definitely it works. It's just having the reassurance from someone like a coach to say this is gonna help. We're gonna take a step backwards in these 2 other sports, but they'll still be there for you. You can catch them up later.
Yeah, especially if it's what you're best at. Of the 3, as a triathlete, people who are good at cycling, they want to ride their bike. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to get them to, okay, we can ride once a week for a little bit, and we need to spend more time running or in the pool, to get them to kind of get their mind off of, well, if I don't ride, my strength is no longer going to be my strength. Like, no, you'll be fine. Like, we'll get through this.
You have to park your ego for your best sports.
And be aware of the fact that the thing you're best at is the thing that you obviously are probably going to gravitate towards, and you probably enjoy doing more because you're better at it. So it's kind of a short little ego check too. Like, hey, I need to work my limiters to think about my long-term goal, which is to be a better athlete overall, and kind of trust in that whole process as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
What are we missing?
Good info.
What are we missing?
I don't know, man.
I think the one thing that I meant to mention earlier, that was brought up a couple times, so you guys are both traveling together, the accountability aspect of having a training partner. You mentioned a few times you're doing these events with another person, and you two are keeping each other accountable. You can be outside of the endurance realm if you're listening to this and you're wanting to get consistent in a routine. Having a workout partner is huge in that.
We've got a swim group back in the UK, which is great, running up to Otillo, doing these red mists together. We all get together and jump in. And Andy was training very specifically for this event, but all of us were just getting in because Andy was doing a big session, so it was easier to go in and do it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and that helped me show up and
stay motivated.
Definitely.
The days that you don't want to do it, having that person, or like in our case, we get a lot of athletes that say, one of the biggest values that you guys provide is I know that you're going to be looking and seeing whether or not I've done my workout. And so just that level of accountability has helped a lot of people. So I think that's a huge thing.
You have to keep the group aspect. I mean, so many people get into endurance sports for the social side of it anyway. So if you take that away from them, it's easy to get totally burned out, even if you're doing low volume, high volume. So we try to work around people's groups as much as possible, giving them a little leash on some of the group rides they want to do, or group runs, or swims, masters classes and stuff like that, just so they have as much social interaction as they need to stay motivated. because you know it's easy when you, especially on low volume, when you're trying to go high efficiency, low volume. It's a lot of by yourself in a dark room, like
it's hard after a long day's work, or to then get the motivation to go and do something else. If you're turning up as a group going, it's easier to go.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, real quick, guys, tell them where they can find you.
PrecisionHydration.com for those who can't see the video.
This is going to be on audio as well.
This will also be audio. Yep. PrecisionHydration.com. These are the men of hydration. We've been linked up with them for what? I guess we're getting ready to go on a year and a half now.
18 months, yeah.
And it's been it's honestly, the products are, there's so many people come back for more product because the product just works once you know what you should be taking. So it's a great product. Check them out if you haven't already. We'll have links to all this stuff as well. But we appreciate you guys flying all the way over.
Just to sit on my couch.
Exactly.
Well, the only complaint is we generally prefer flying up the front of the airplane. If next time you can,
all economy. This is all. We're on a budget.
We'll work on it.
Dale bought 5 new lights for this showing instead. We couldn't afford the first class.
Sorry.
That's why we're all
Thanks
sweating
for having
now.
us, guys.
Yeah, you bet.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.